I just sincerely kept asking, please do not back me into a corner. Please do not back me into the corner. I'm not a co-signer of crazy. You can do all of that and be all of that all you want. But when you try to force it on me and make it my reality, now we have a problem. I don't understand how Christian, Bible go together and Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party, I'm going to say it tonight so that you won't be confused, is the anti-Christ party. It is anti-family. And I'm going to say this, you're not going to believe it, but it is anti-black folk. You are only needed for votes. You are only loved when it's time to get your votes. There's no real care about you. And see, we still stuck, and we got that thing ingrained in us that this is the party for the black man. It is not. The party has changed. Black people, really, to be honest with you, have never been the priority. They have only been used. Go back and look at the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We've all given Democrats credit for that, but Johnson was the one that wanted to pass it, but he couldn't get enough Democrat votes to pass it. It was the Republicans that pushed and passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Go tonight and look it up. Look at Wiki, W-I-K-I, put it in there, 1960. He couldn't even get enough Democrats to vote for it. So he had to go to Republican senators in order to help him out. They are anti-life. The party pushes stuff that's anti-life. It pushes anti-morality because most of their policies are immoral, that pushes sexual perversion. It is the party of death. Why do you say that, Pastor? If you go back, you'll see slavery started with the Democratic Party. And we saw many slaves that died. We also saw under Jim Crow. Jim Crow was established by Democrats. And we saw under Jim Crow how many were hung and lynched. And then we are seeing today how many babies, African American people are giving up their future because they won't have, in another 15, 20 years, they won't have enough people because they have cut their birth rates off and have aborted their children. This is exactly what the party wants. So it is a party of death when it comes down to it. It is a party that is against black families. Look at the history of the family. From slavery, which were Democrat plantation owners, in slavery, they separated our families. They would not even acknowledge the marriages of black families. They would even take a black man over here who called himself being married to a woman, but if he was a big, strong guy, they took him and made him mate with another woman. That's one of the reasons our marriages and our families have not been strong, because the spirit of that has passed down generationally. We have not always had strong family structures like we should have. Now, we did good up in the early 1900s, 1920, 30. Our families were pretty good and pretty strong during that time. But what happened was they bought the war on poverty. This was Democrat. Bought the war on poverty. You know what they did? They gave money to fix a problem.
They say they hate capitalism, yes, but they love to use us and live off of capitalism while they spout an anti-God, anti-America rhetoric. The Democratic Party, they promote black women, particularly if she's a lesbian. Yes. They promote black women who are not even qualified. We have seen with the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is really racism, which is really saying, well, black people just, darn it, they're not smart enough, so we have to give them handouts. And you're pushing black women who are not qualified. Dr. Claudine Gay of Harvard. Yes. Now the head of diversity at Harvard is also accused, if I have it correctly, of plagiarism. And we'll get to Fannie Willis, who was elected as a DA in Fulton County, Georgia, primarily because she's black, in my opinion. And we've seen case after case. But the black man, where is he? That's done deliberately. And this started really in the 60s, where the Democrats pushed policy, right, that said to women, particularly black women, you don't need a man in the home. We'll give you more money if you're single. And I grew up in the 70s and I saw the effects. I saw it in the 80s, the broken home. Now it's more dysfunctional home where you have some women with 8 children by 5 different fathers. Exactly. They don't know who their fathers are, in and out. It has almost destroyed the black community. But they're doing it in a different way now. They're promoting black women and want black men to be down here. And I think black men sense that. And they know that Trump relates to them. They relate to Trump very well. The evil Barack Obama.
Barack Obama is a foot soldier.
Oh yeah, for the globalists.
Elite.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, globalist.
Barack Obama was a plant.
Yes. He was.
And now they want to put Michelle.
Barack Obama was, yes, a plant.
Definitely.
He did nothing for the black community.
Nobody even knows who he is.
Did he ever come back to Chicago with as much crime to talk to young black men?
No.
He doesn't give a damn.
He doesn't. He doesn't.
Barack Obama is a curse on this nation. So is Joe Biden.
I think it's the black. Yes.
We provide the money for his Marxist socialist programs, pushing abortion in Africa and other things. He didn't care about us.
No.
He didn't care. That gave rise to Trump, because Trump actually listened to us.
Democrats and Christianity. First, to say that the Republican Party are sinners and they're anti-Christianity and they hate Jesus' teachings. But they're the first ones who also skip Genesis, because Genesis says God created a man and a woman, an executive order that Donald Trump is doing right by the Christian faith. A man and a woman, punto final, period, end of story. The Democratic Party hasn't even gone through Genesis, yet they forget that God created life in the womb. Multiple times does it say, do not murder. One in the 10 Commandments, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And the only pro-life party is the Republican Party. So Democrats, not only do you not read Genesis, a man and a woman, not only does your party not care about a man and a woman instructed by God in Genesis, but they also murder innocent life. And nothing makes more sadness in God's eyes than the shed of innocent blood. And that's of innocent babies because of your abortion policy in the Democratic Party. Third, the children. Democrats are very quick to say that Republicans don't care about children, but yet it's the same Biden administration that lost over 300,000 migrant children. Where are they? Oh, also the children? Yes, the same one the Democrats want to teach about changing their gender when they're 8 and gender affirming surgeries. Democrat Christians, I'm appalled. Where in the Bible does it say God makes mistakes with our sex? Where does it say that God wants little Johnny to be little Janita? Or that God wants a little boy to be a little girl and a little girl to be a little boy? If you can find me that sentence in the Bible, please share that.
With the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
Christian nation.
We are no longer a Christian nation.
We do not consider ourselves a Christian nation.
The United States has been enriched by Muslim Americans. Since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. Islam has always been a part of America's story. There is a mosque in every state in our union and over 1,200 mosques within our borders. Let there be no doubt, Islam is a part of America.
Not sit back and wait for a savior. You can't opt out because you don't feel sufficiently inspired by this or that particular candidate. This is not a rock concert. This is not Coachella. We don't need a Messiah. All we need are decent, honest, hard-working people who are accountable and who have America's best interests at heart. And they'll step up and they'll join our government and they will make things better.
Let's be real for a second. A lot of people don't actually hate politics. They hate feeling like something isn't adding up, but nobody's saying it out loud, and that's where we are right now. And I'm just going to be straight with you. People get uncomfortable when you stop sugarcoating things, when you stop trying to make everything sound nice and start calling it what it is, because conviction isn't supposed to feel good. It's supposed to make you stop and think. And what I've been seeing more and more is people tying their entire identity, how they think, how they vote, even what they believe morally, to a political party. And I call that identity politics. And then get defensive when you question it. So think about that for a second. Since when did a political party become something you can't question? Since when did it become off limits to say, hey, this doesn't line up? Because from my perspective, when you really step back and look at what's being pushed, policies, messaging, culture, there's a disconnect that a lot of people feel but don't know how to explain. And you got people saying they care about family, but then supporting policies that don't exactly strengthen families in real life. And you got people saying they care about opportunity, but living in cities where the cost of living is out of control, crime is up, and everyday life just feels harder. Look at places like New York or Chicago. Regular people aren't sitting around debating politics all day. They're trying to figure out why rent keeps going up, why their neighborhoods feel less safe, and why the solutions they keep hearing don't seem to fix anything. And yet, if you question the direction things are going, somehow you are the problem. And that's where it starts to feel off, and that's where people start thinking, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Because this isn't about being dramatic. It's about looking at real outcomes in real life. And it's about asking simple questions that should have simple answers. And when those answers don't come or they don't make sense, that's when people start waking up. And that's when people start rethinking what they've been told, what they've believed, and what they've been supporting. And whether people want to admit it or not, that shift is happening right now. So hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's break this down in plain English, because this is where a lot of people start feeling that disconnect but can't quite explain it. Because here's what this actually looks like in real life. You got a political system where certain policies sound good on surface, help people, support communities, create fairness. But when you actually look at how they play out, the results don't match the message. Think about major cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. These places have been run the same way for years. So the question is simple. Are things getting better for everyday people or harder? Because if you are a working class person in those cities, you're dealing with higher rent, higher taxes, and in a lot of cases, more crime in your neighborhood. And that's not a talking point. That's daily life. That's a parent wondering if their kid could walk home safely. That's someone working full time and still struggling to afford a one bedroom. So when people hear big promises about help and support, but their reality keeps getting tougher, that's when frustration starts to build. And instead of addressing that frustration directly, what often happens is the conversation gets redirected. It turns into labels, emotions, and narratives instead of results. But regular people don't live in narratives, they live in reality. And then you got cultural messaging layered on top of it. Messaging around family, identity, and values that, from my perspective, don't always strengthen the foundation people actually rely on. Because let's be honest, strong families, stable communities, and personal responsibility aren't just political talking points. They are what keep everyday life functioning. And when those things start breaking down, you feel it immediately. You see it in schools, you see it in neighborhoods, you see it in how people interact with each other. And here's where it get even more real. There are people who genuinely believe they are supporting something good. They are not bad people. They're not trying to cause harm. They've just been told a certain version of reality over and over again. And at some point, you start accepting it without questioning it. But once you step back and actually compare what's being said versus what's actually happening, that's when the things start to shift. That's when people start asking questions. That's why they look at it and say, why does this keep happening? And why aren't these solutions working? And those are fair questions. Those are necessary questions, because if the outcome doesn't match the intention, then something in the system isn't working the way it's being presented. But let's go a layer deeper, because this is where the bigger picture starts to come into focus. From my perspective, a lot of this comes down to a misunderstanding of roles. What the government is supposed to do, what individuals are supposed to do, and what institutions like the church were originally meant to handle. If you go back to the foundation of this country, the idea wasn't that the government would control every part of people's lives or solve every problem. The idea was limited government, individual responsibility, and strong communities. And that's not just political, that's practical, because when too much responsibility gets shifted to the government, you start to lose accountability at the individual level. And you can see that play out. Think about policies that expand dependency without creating long-term stability. On paper, they sound compassionate. A lot of stuff sound compassionate, but that doesn't mean that the end result is actually good when it comes to pouring in individuals and having their best interests. In practice, they can trap people into cycles where it's harder to move forward. For example, like individuals living off of the government daddy, individuals who can work. And if it wasn't for Trump putting a requirement for individuals to at least understand that nothing is free, you won't have people continue to open their legs and have kids without understanding that you have to work. And if you don't work, you don't eat. And you have kids that you're responsible for, that you brought into this world that obviously you have to take care of. And that doesn't mean you feel entitled or be entitled to individuals, the AKA the American taxpayer, to sit there and basically fund you for having all these kids in the name of welfare. And that's not helping. That's managing. That's maintaining a situation instead of improving it. Now, to be fair, there are people on the other side who genuinely believe government involvement is necessary to support vulnerable populations. And that's a real concern. And every once in a while, everybody has their issues and life be lifing. I'm not against the helping hand every once in a while, but not depending on a helping hand. And nobody is saying people shouldn't be helped, is my point. The question is how, because there's a difference between empowering someone and making them dependent on a system that doesn't actually lead to growth. And when you bring faith into this conversation, it adds another layer. The Constitution protects your right to believe, to practice, to speak, but it doesn't force belief. And from a foundational standpoint, faith has always been about personal conviction, not government enforcement. And you've seen what Obama just said. Barack Hussein Obama just basically said that America, United States of America, has been enriched by Islam. And it goes to my point that you don't force belief from a foundational standpoint when faith is involved in government enforcement. That's an important distinction, because once those lines get blurred, as you see that he did, people start mixing systems that were never meant to operate the same way. And then there's leadership and influence. And this is where people had to be honest with themselves. Charisma is powerful. Messaging is powerful. And if someone sounds good, looks confident, like Barack Hussein Obama is good at doing, charming back then in 2008, and deliver a message in a way that connects emotionally, keyword emotionally, people will follow that, even if they haven't really examined what's being said. Look at Zoran Mudami and look at the individuals, let alone the New Yorkers, aka American citizens, aka American taxpayer, over there in New York. They thought everything was free. There was a video that went viral of a young woman who basically said, if I could be given a Lamborghini for free, why should I have to work for it if I'm going to be given it for free? Not understanding that it all comes down to understanding that nothing is free. So you feel entitled enough as a young individual who can get up and work and be productive, which then promotes empowering each other and not being dependent on the system, but actually uplifting each other and actually creating opportunity, because you have to realize you have an influence on somebody, small, big or small. And what you also have to understand is, if you have an influence as a young individual within a generation you're in, for example, boomers, Gen X, whatever the case may be, if you feel as though, and they look at it like, oh, well, this person gets a Lamborghini for free, then I could get a Lamborghini for free. But in New York, it's being shown and citizens feel betrayed because taxes are going up and nothing was free. No busing became free and nothing like that. If anything, the opposite happened. Now, Zoran Mudami wants to tax you to the grave, right? If you have an estate or your family left you anything, they want to tax that. If it's up to 750,000, right? Let's say you have $1 million in the state, trust fund, whatever the case may be, your family left down to you. They will tax that to death. And basically, what happens in the long haul is, if they tax you to death, let's say, for example, to keep it simple, you have a generational home that's been passed down where it's paid off, but you just pay property taxes. But the property taxes are so high that the individual that it got passed down to, the younger individual from generation, it can't be sustained because the property tax is so high, they'll take your house. And the reason why the property taxes is going up, because Zoran Mudami believes that you should be able to pay for the next person to be able to afford to live in New York, instead of them actually being independent, instead of being dependent on the system to be productive enough to get a highly skilled skill to go out and get it on their own and work for what they get, so they can afford to live in New York City on their own, because they're the one that choose to want to live in New York City. Why should it be another person preference where they get taxed to death, where they have a lifelong investment or a lifelong, I should say, generational thing to being passed down like a home, why should they be taxed to death from property taxes where then the generational family home can be sustained, let alone anything else passed down? So I'm saying all that to say that the reality is New Yorkers are betrayed because nothing became free. And that's the danger of depending on the system. But like I said, charisma and messaging that sound emotionally, that is, people will follow that, and that's human nature. But that's also why it's important to actually understand what you believe and why you believe it. Because if you don't, someone else will define it for you. And that's when you end up supporting things that don't actually line up with your values, even if you think they do. And this isn't about attacking people. It's about encouraging people to think clearly, to look at outcomes, and to make decisions based on reality instead of just messaging. At the end of the day, this really comes down to alignment, not labels, not party loyalty, alignment. Do the things you say you believe actually match what you're supporting? Because that gap right there, that's where a lot of confusion and frustration is coming right now. And do you have to overcomplicate it? Just look at real life. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Look at your city, your neighborhood, your cost of living, your sense of safety, your opportunities. Are things moving in a direction or not? That's a question every person has to answer for themselves. From my perspective, we reached a point where more people are starting to ask those questions honestly without just defaulting to what they always been told by a typical politician. Say one thing, do another. And that's a good thing because nothing changes until people are willing to step back and say, all right, what is really working and what isn't? What's actually working? And this isn't about being perfect. It's not about having every answer, okay? It's about being willing to look at reality without filters and make decisions based on that. And whether you agree with me or not, at least have your reasons. At least know why you stand where you stand, because in the long run, that's what matters. Thinking for yourself, staying grounded, and making choices that actually line up with what you believe. If you made it this far, you already know this conversation matters. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Catch you in the next one, family. Peace.